What's up, guys? Thank you for joining me for a brand new series where Top 10 Wizard investigates. That's right. We're starting off with this cryptid case called the Bolivian Saurian, but as you can see, it really doesn't look like what people think it does. We're starting off with the Quarterly Journal of Science, Volume 20. Because if you try and look up like the Bolivian Saurian online, you're just gonna find a bunch of people talking about like a sauropod dinosaur or something, like a brachiosaurus or a brontosaurus or whatever, and it's obviously not that. Okay? And we're starting off with the description of the beast. To the editor of the Journal of Science, Sir, the Anglo-Brazilian Times, March 24th, 1883, that's right, this is 1800s talk, says that the Brazilian minister at La Paz, Bolivia, has remitted to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Rio, this Brazil, photographs of drawings of an extraordinary Saurian killed on the Beni, that's a river, after receiving 36 balls, those are shots from a gun, by order of the President of Bolivia. The dried body, which had been preserved at Asuncion, was sent to La Paz. It is 12 meters long from snout to point of the tail, which latter is flattened. That means that the tail at the end is flat. Besides the anterior head, okay, it has 4 meters behind two small but completely formed heads. And there's a question mark there because they're like, what? How could there be two small? That doesn't make sense. Rising from the back, all three have much resemblance to the head of a dog. Okay, so I don't know why people think this is some sort of sauropod or something. The legs are short and end in formidable claws. The legs, belly, and lower part of the throat appear defended by a kind of scale armor, and all the back is protected by a still thicker and double cuirass. It's like armor, starting from behind the ears of the anterior head and continuing to the tail. The neck is long and the belly large and almost dragging on the ground. Professor Gilvetti, and you'll see that Professor Gilvetti's name does get changed around because sometimes just in newspapers and stuff, it's like sometimes they just change people's names and stuff because they're just copying from other newspapers. So sometimes there's misspellings, but usually of names. So Professor Gilvetti, who examined the beast, thinks it is not a monster but a member of a rare or almost lost species, as the Indians, natives, in some parts of Bolivia use small earthen vases of identical shape and probably copied from nature. If this account should prove to be accurate, it would form a counterpart to the etching of the mammoth which forms so interesting a memorial of prehistoric art. I am William E. A. Exxon. Okay, so we see there from the description there that they're talking about, doesn't even sound like a sort of a long-necked dinosaur at all, a sauropod at all. This thing's got armor around it. Okay, it's got like armor around it, like we saw in the picture. But here they don't have the picture yet, so they're just talking about it. And they're saying that, did you hear what they said there? That they sent the body to the Prime Minister of Bolivia, which means that if that body is still preserved somewhere, that could be very interesting evidence. So there may even be a body of this thing, okay? Okay. And so now here we're seeing some of the pottery that they're talking about, that the animals that they're saying it looks like, and it definitely looks more like one of these, looks definitely more like one of these types of dogs. This is pre-Columbian pottery type of things. And these dogs have specific names. This is a specific breed of dog that they all really like. You can see how much they like it. They keep making pottery of this dog that they really love. But then there's some of pottery that looks like this, okay? There's some of it that looks like this. And it's a Kalima dog, okay? That's what these things are called. These dogs are called Kalima dogs. But this one, you see how it's got that like sort of a shell type of thing? And the tail's not really like a dog tail. It's not really, and it's got the dogs do have the bellies low to the ground. So basically, you know, this is probably, or something like this. Maybe they were looking at one of these. You see at the bottom, it's kind of cut off. But in this one too, you see at the bottom, it says, vessel in the form of a dog. Okay? And so here, you know, that's basically what we're looking at. Not a sauropod. Whatever you believe in, that's fine. But just investigate. Just, you know, the top 10 wizards investigate, and I found out that the Bolivian Saurian they're not talking about a dinosaur. Okay? They're talking about some dog creature or something. Okay? And there is more to the story. Okay, so, and here's other, from Scientific American, Volume 49, where there's other accounts of it. Back in the day, you just get newspapers, and people would just copy things from other newspapers and just put it in their newspapers, and you were just allowed to do that, basically. and here's ones in Spanish, and there's other ones. There was other ones from in Brazil in Portuguese, but I couldn't find them again. But that one, see fotografias. Okay, that could mean that actual pictures were taken. But we'll talk about that later because there's slight discrepancy as to whether pictures were taken or just the drawing. And now here we go with the drawing again. Okay, so this is October 1883, Industrial News. And this is, they finally get the picture, okay? The Bolivian Nondescript. A few weeks since we published an account of the huge Saurian, so-called, reported as killed on the river Beni in Bolivia. We are now indebted to the courtesy of our contemporary, El Comercio, as a newspaper, of this city for a cut of the monster, for the photograph of which is it indebted to the Brazilian minister at La Paz, Bolivia. He caused drawings and photographs, we see, of this extraordinary creature to be taken for the Brazilian government. The monster would be, as a piece of sculpture, a mixture of the classical and the hideous, but as a Saurian, its creation was possibly an attempt to prove that if, as is said, 2 heads are better than 1, 3 heads would be better than 2. 36 balls, however, have forever prevented a test of the theory. This nondescript has been called a saurian, which is scientifically described as an animal of the order of reptiles, covered with scales and having 4 legs like the lizard, i.e. a mixture of the crocodile, alligator, and lizard. But here the description leaves us, and we are at a loss for an application. Anyway, we are much pleased with the courtesy of our contemporary and the opportunity afforded to present the beast what it is to our readers. Here it is right here. And now focus on this thing. They're saying a saurian. Remember, the word saurian had slightly different meaning. It really did just mean mostly like crocodiles and stuff. Okay? And then it became related to dinosaurians. Dinosaurs. But look at this thing. That's no brontosaurus, it's no sauropod. It's a dog type of thing, and it's got 2 heads on the back, like I said. They weren't mistaken when they said that. And then the tail. You see that? The tail was flattened at the end, and the belly does hang very low to the ground. You see it's got like armor. It's got like armor all around it. That's pretty interesting. Okay, so likewise from the El Comercio, and the description, likewise from the El Comercio, and was also prepared by the Brazilian minister at La Paz. The monster was killed on Beni River, but only after 36 bullets were lodged did it die, and give up its incomprehensible ghost. By order of the president of Bolivia, the dried body, which had been preserved in Assumption, was sent to La Paz. Remember that. It is 12 meters long from the snout to point of the tail, which latter is flattened. Okay, so that is pretty long. Okay, so here we see that a meter is, according to American measure, 39.368 inches, and the above would make the Leviathan some 39 feet long. How thick is not stated, but we are told the belly was large and dragging on the ground, which is not at all improbable in view of the brevity of the legs, short legs. Paraphrasing Poe, we might exclaim of it, be ye fish, flesh, or devil. Okay, that's a good Poe reference there, but we see that it's pretty long. Okay, so now here's from the Journal of Science and Annals of Biology, Astronomy, blah, 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 volume 2 or something. Okay, so this guy is a very cool guy. I don't know his name. I don't see a name attached to the article that he wrote here, but he makes some very good points. You can pause and read some of the stuff if you want to, but right now he's just sort of setting up the Bolivian monster, and he's talking about like how evidence is perceived and stuff like this. And so, you know, this video isn't about that. It's not about me trying to get you to believe that there was actually something that they shot. It's just trying to get you to see that it's definitely not no dinosaur that we've ever seen. This is a completely new beast, a completely new cryptozoological thing. We may now finally turn to the account before us of the Bolivian monster. A brief notice of it was forwarded us by a Manchester correspondent, a gentleman whose well-known intelligence and standing excluded all suspicion of the canard or of an intended hoax. His letter was published in our issue for June 1883 and earned us in certain quarters a few sneers. We now learn further particulars from the Journal de Luna and from Cosmos. The animal in question was killed in the River Beni in Bolivia, one of the tributaries of the Madeira, and hence, indirectly, of the Amazons. A photograph was taken of the body, an engraving from which appears in Cosmos. We've seen that. The skeleton is said to have been conveyed to the city of La Paz, where it is now deposited. The length of the animal from the head to the extremity of the tail is given as 12 meters, or approximately 40 feet. No other dimensions are given, but the body, judging from the figure before us, is exceedingly massive. The general aspect of the creature is that of an aquatic saurian. There is the unusual armor-clad trunk. There are 4 powerful legs terminating in formidable claws, but so short that the belly will scarcely clear the ground. The tail is of the usual saurian character, very much thicker than is met with in any mammal, but differing from that of the crocodiles by the absence of ridges, and by being compressed not laterally, but vertically towards the tip. But when we turn to the head, our ideas of the fitness of things receive a shock. Everyone must have observed that in lizards and crocodiles, the neck, if we can admit that one exists at all in the familiar sense of the term, and the head lie in the same plane as the back. In this animal, on the contrary, we see a neck proportionally as long as that, e.g., of a greyhound, rising upwards nearly at right angles to the back, and supporting a head which presents, externally at least, most of the characters of a mammalian head. It is remarked in the description accompanying the plate that the head resembles that of a dog. There is a prominent forehead, such as we find in certain heads of dogs, quite unlike the flattened saurian type of skull. Above all, there are 2 upright external ears, not unlike those of the fox. The importance of this feature will appear if we reflect that no reptile now living, or as far as we know extinct, possesses an external ear. The only approach in that direction is a fold of skin at the auditory opening in the crocodile. Indeed, a projecting external ear is so essentially a mammalian feature that an animal belonging to any other division of the vertebrates thus equipped has to the human mind an uncanny aspect. The only non-mammalian character shown in the plate lies in the teeth and in the width of the gape. The teeth, as far as can be judged from the figure, offer no distinction of incisors, canines, and molars, but consist of a row of sharp wedges differing little in size, and all pointing somewhat backwards. The articulation of the jaws is at a point much farther back than in mammals, so that the gape is very wide. The lower jaws form almost a flat plate, and no trace of a tongue is visible. If that organ, however, is formed on the crocodilian type, it will not be apparent on a side view of the head, even when the jaws are open. Still, notwithstanding these anomalous features, if the figure is covered up with paper as to leave merely the head uncovered, non-specialists in every trial which we have made pronounce it to be the head of some ferocious mammal. Whether there exists hair upon the face or any part of the body does not appear either from the figure or the description. We must, however, remember that the existence of hair in reptiles is not unheard of, since a small hairy tortoise has been discovered in China, which I don't think that's true. I think he's talking about something that's not that. So far, therefore, this animal possesses characteristics sufficiently anomalous. What follows, if does not fully justify complete skepticism as to the alleged nature and the very existence of this animal, makes us crave eagerly for the fuller and clearer information. According both to the figure and the description, the creature has, in addition to the head already described, 2 others, placed in a parallel position on each side of the spine, about 12 or 13 feet behind the normal head. These 2 subsidiary heads, though somewhat smaller, have the same eyes, ears, and jaws as the principal head, and they are both turned forwards. It is scarcely necessary to say that nothing similar has been observed either among the vertebrates, arthropods, or any other cephalous class of mammals. We may venture on the assertion that these extra heads are either really existent or they are wanton and intentional falsehood. We cannot here conceive the possibility of a mistake or of an exaggeration. Supposing for a moment we have here before us the record and the portraiture of an actual fact, and we have next to ask, is this a normal feature of some rare animal species, or have we to do with a monstrosity? Professor Givelti, I'm pretty sure it's Gilvetti, but here we see it Professor Givelti, whose address unfortunately is not given, or we should have taken the liberty of communicating with him, has examined the animal and forms the conclusion that the specimen is not a monstrosity, but is a perfectly normal member of a rare species. One circumstance upon which this conclusion is based is that the certain earthen vessels, which date back to the time of the Incas, are made in imitation of the form of this animal. Hence, it is inferred that in former times this strange saurian was more common than at present, and by its singularity of form, certainly not by its beauty, attracted the notice of ancient Peruvian potters. We cannot here take up the numerous and grave questions, morphological, physiological, embryological, and taxonomic, with which the existence of this creature, if verified, is certain to raise. It will be a moot point to decide whether its existence will be harder to account for on the theory of direct individual creation or on that of development by natural selection. Both, as it seems to us, will find the task far from easy. We may, however, glance at the evidence for the actual existence of the creature before us. The two accounts we have received do not exactly tally. That taken from the Anglo-Brazilian Times of March 24, 1883, says that the Brazilian representative at La Paz had sent home to his government photographs of drawings of an extraordinary saurian. On the other hand, the journal De Luna says merely that the same official had sent several photographs of an extraordinary saurian. This difference is very serious. If the photographs had been taken directly from the animal, they furnish conclusive evidence as to its external structure. But if the photographs have merely been taken from a drawing, they may embody merely the invention or the exaggerations and distortions of the artist. We fear that the latter is the case, because the figure before us represents the animal standing on its feet, with its neck erect and its eyes and jaws open as if ready for combat. We doubt strongly whether any explorer on the Beni would travel provided with the necessary appliances for the instantaneous photographic process. The writer in Cosmos, who does not give his name, obtained his account from his brother, a missionary in Chile, who had translated it from the original Spanish of the Journal de Luna. He promises, however, further information as soon as it is obtained. Okay, those were the facts, and now it's time for my speculation. You know how the guy was saying in that one letter, he's like, the mouth it gapes open too wide, and the teeth are like, there's not really clear definition. It's kind of just like all a bunch of wedges that point backwards. Well, that kind of sounds a little bit like the thylacine, like the head of a thylacine, which was actually a marsupial. And so if you take these two things into account, the sort of head shape, and the fact that there were two smaller heads on the back of this creature, if you want to look at it seriously and scientifically, then there is a chance that what they had shot was a marsupial mammal that had two of its young on its back, protected in some form of armor or shell or something that we're just not familiar with, because we don't have too many predatory marsupials on the market, because they killed the thylacine, but that might still be alive, so who knows. And actually, speaking of predatory marsupials, the actual next Top 10 Wizard Investigates is going to be about another theoretical predatory marsupial, so keep out on the watch for that one. Okay, next point of speculation to talk about. Okay, Glyptodon. We do have to talk about these guys. They were kind of like big armadillo type of things, and they did have big, bulky shells on their back like this. And I don't think there's any evidence that their shells were involved in like marsupial behavior. Like, I don't think their shells actually had like their young stored inside the shell and they could like unhinge some of those things. But nature is crazy, and that might be a possible biological function to think about. Who knows? Okay, guys, and thank you for watching episode 1 of the Top 10 Wizard Investigates. The first episode, the Bolivian Saurian. And just one last final point, just like to say another couple things, is that the original newspaper article that they were talking about, I'm pretty sure I did find it, but now I can't find it, and that's a problem. I use Google Books. Thank you to books.google.com for allowing me to look up all your old newspapers, and the thing is, there's so many old newspapers out there, and they don't have them all. But then sometimes ones that they did have, they're not there anymore, because sometimes corporations can buy the copyrights of these things or something like this, or they can be added into archive collections, putting behind paywalls, certain things like this. So just try and get your free newspapers from the 1800s from books.googles.com while you still can. It was very nice of them to have these sorts of informations available for research, or sometimes the truth might get lost. And that's all just I wanted to do with this video, is just please understand, it's not about believing in a creature, it's about seeing that picture in the newspaper and seeing, oh, this isn't about a sauropod dinosaur. This is clearly not about that. So let's just get the facts straight. cryptozoologist, okay? Come on.